Marvel's Merc with a Mouth is getting his very own R-rated feature film starring Ryan Reynolds on February 12, 2016. And it only took 6 years to make, but hey, better late than never. And today on The Dan Cave, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Deadpool before you see the movie. The world got their first taste of that spicy meatball named Deadpool back in 1991's New Mutants number 98 from Marvel Comics. Created by Fabian Nicieza and Rob Liefeld, Deadpool was a mercenary for hire with a questionable set of morals who found himself continually at odds with Cable and X-Force, who's a sort of cooler, leaner, meaner, more 90s-tacular X-Men spinoff. Tasked with killing Cable, this Deadpool was dark, brooding, and generally miles away from the fun-loving, slightly psychotic anti-hero that we love today. Now, if his name and alter ego sound familiar, that's because Deadpool was initially conceived as a satire of DC Comics villain Deathstroke, aka Slade Wilson. Slade Wade, Deathstroke Deadpool, Slade Wade, you get it, you're smart. But hey, if it weren't for Marvel's proud tradition of cribbing from DC, we would never have the Avengers, or Thanos, or tons of other characters, so quit your belly aching and be thankful for artistic evolution. Deadpool's backstory has been retconned multiple times throughout the years, using his mental instability as a handy excuse, but let's try and go back to the beginning, shall we? Now, his childhood is hard to nail down, but we know his father was an alcoholic who was killed by one of Wade's friends, and his mother died of cancer. Wade W. Wilson spent some time in the military before turning to a life of contract killing. I mean, what else would you do? Eventually, he found his way to Canada, where he Don Drapered the shit out of a man named Wade T. Wilson, stealing his identity after accidentally murdering his wife. Now, quick sidebar about that. Wade T moved to Japan, became a sorcerer, and eventually a supervillain named T-Ray. That old chestnut. This story was later disavowed in the Cable Deadpool series, but that Rashomon-esque level of uncertainty about what actually happened in Deadpool's backstory is part of his unique, crazed charm. What we do know is that after being diagnosed with inoperable brain cancer, Wade wound up being part of an experimental treatment program from Department K, a covert branch of the Canadian government responsible for the Weapon X program. Does that sound familiar? It should, because that's what gave Wolverine his adamantium skeleton. He's got metal bones. Now, after enduring incredible pain, Wade Wilson was reborn not as a mutant, but a mutate. These experiments gave him an incredible healing factor derived from Wolverine's own, which has had varying degrees of effectiveness over the years, but generally, it makes him virtually indestructible. Point of fact, he's survived decapitation, dismemberment, and even being liquefied into a fine red mist by the Incredible Hulk. Now, that was a disgusting issue. However, the healing factor didn't work, at least not right away, and not how they wanted it to, so they deemed the experiment a failure. Now, to try to get their money's worth from old Wade, they used him as part of a special ops squad until he murdered a teammate, which is apparently a big no-no. Should have read the employee handbook. So, they sent him to the hospice, which is sort of like an island of misfit toys for the genetic experiments. Except, unbeknownst to Department K, this facility was run by the cruel Dr. Killbrew, who alongside his assistant Ajax, played by Ed Skrein in the forthcoming movie, would systematically torture their patients, running a Deadpool with his employees to see how long a patient would last before dying. You get it, Deadpool. But Deadpool ain't going out like that, see? Not only did Wade grin and bear it, earning himself the respect of his fellow inmates, but he wound up starting a romantic relationship with death itself. Yeah, that death. Ooh. Anyway, Wade continued to hold out against Killbrew and Ajax's cruel experiments, taunting them and earning his motor mouth reputation all the while. Eventually, angered by Wade's constant hectoring, Ajax lobotomized one of Wade's dear friends, a patient named Worm, which in turn led to Wade putting Worm out of his misery, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest style. Of course, that's a big no-no in the hospice. I mean, I guess killing people in general is kind of frowned upon wherever you work, so anyway, they removed Wade's heart, killing him. Or so they thought. This, in fact, triggered Wade's healing factor once and for all, regenerating his heart and saving his life. Although the healing factor saved his life, it didn't do jack squat for all the scars the cancer and the torture had left all over Wade's body, but I guess there's always moisturizer. Now, long story short, Wade flipped the script on Ajax, brutally beating him and leaving him for dead, killing all the other employees of the hospice and freeing the patients. Then, free at last, he donned his iconic red and black costume and decided to give himself a name that would remind himself of where he came from and what he had survived. Deadpool. In addition to his healing factor, Deadpool has superhuman strength, reflexes, and agility, as well as advanced combat training that make him both deadly and unpredictable in combat. He's also deeply mentally unstable, suffering from psychosis that makes him hear voices which manifest themselves as caption boxes within his comics. In fact, Deadpool is one of the few characters actually aware that he's a comic book character. It's a fact that writers like to exploit for laughs and also have weird asides both in the comic and soon enough on the big screen. At one point it was revealed that the little yellow boxes with which he conversed was actually another person who'd been fused inside Wade's brain, but that's a story for another day. I'm gonna make you watch 2 episodes. Now, in the movie, we're going to see Deadpool palling around with the likes of the X-Man Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead, but we'll also see some familiar faces like his trusty sidekicks, the neurotic arms dealer slash fixer Weasel, and the blind woman slash prisoner slash live-in maid slash we're not quite sure blind Al. Together with them, Deadpool uses his powers, his rapier wit, and unstable mental condition to save the day, or muck things up. Look, I'll be honest, it usually ends in blood, tears, and tacos, and not necessarily in that order. Being the wisecracking, lead-spraying Lothario that he is, Deadpool's had his fair share of love interests over the years as well. Most notable among them are Copycat, a former prostitute turned mutant shapeshifter who we'll see on screen played by Morena Baccarin, Death, as I mentioned before, and a literal succubus named Shikla, who Deadpool eventually married. Ooh, that's fun. Now here's an even funner fact. More fun, most fun, it's just a fun fact. Deadpool was originally contracted to kidnap Shikla by Dracula himself. Instead, Deadpool went all Mr. Steal Your Girl, and thus true love was born. Although we probably won't see that until like Deadpool 3, Baby's Got Drac. And that, my friends, is just the tip of the fourth wall shattering iceberg. Over the years, Deadpool's battled zombified versions of the US presidents, he's tried to assassinate Wolverine, fought an evil version of himself cobbled together from dismembered body parts, palled around with Cable, and stopped a Skrull invasion with his uniquely up DNA. It's all in a day's work though for the merc with a mouth, and who knows what he has up his sleeve or his many pouches in the days and weeks to come. But what do you guys think? What are your favorite Deadpool arcs? I'm a big fan of Jerry Duggan and Brian Posehn's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly myself. Are you excited for the movie? Let's discuss in the comments below, and while you're there, give me a fourth wall breaking thumbs up. I'll know if you don't. Now that's all for today's show. Join us next week when we talk about the terrifying true story of a crazed babysitter using her magical powers to stalk 7 children across the wilds of Montana and the Revenant Nanny McPhee. Until next time, keep on digging.